welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're delving into unsettling stories behind the seemingly ordinary. And our journey begins with normal-looking social media posts with disturbing backstories.
But behind the smiles and matching outfits,
welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 normal social media posts with disturbing backstories.
What is the point of that? I don't understand. Like, what was she trying to accomplish, do you think? Because I can't even...
Because she wants her child to be the most beautiful, perfect child.
For this list, we'll be looking at social media posts or photographs that initially look harmless, but are connected to disturbing or uncomfortable backstories, either by external circumstances or their accidental association with dark controversies. Have you ever thought twice about something you've seen on social media? Number 20. A descent into QAnon. An Arizona man named Michael Meyer posted to Facebook claiming that he had uncovered a secret human trafficking ring in Tucson. This ignited a storm of concern, but it didn't take long for the investigators to prove that it was all made up. But that was just the start of the story. Meyer received thousands of dollars in donations, which subsequently disappeared without a trace. Meyer then fell deeper and deeper into QAnon conspiracies. He often films himself wandering the desert and stealing water tanks from humanitarian groups that he is convinced are part of the trafficking ring. He was finally arrested and charged with 2 felony counts of third-degree burglary. It's a rather disturbing spiral that all began with a viral Facebook post. Number 19. The Turpin Family. Peruse the Turpin family's social media and you'll find a seemingly happy group. Mom Louise and Father David smiling while renewing their wedding vows. Their kids a well-matched group around them. A funny picture referencing Dr. Seuss with the children wearing Thing shirts. In fact, Louise's aunt directly commented on the family's Facebook accounts, saying they looked like one big happy family. In reality, these children were being horrifically abused by their parents. They were only let out of the house on occasion, resulting in these seemingly normal pictures. One of the kids, Jordan Turpin, eventually escaped and called the police.
I don't know how you had the courage, never having spoken to anyone like that.
Louise and David were found guilty of numerous charges and given 25 years to life.
This is off the charts sadistic.
Number 18. Emily Sander. Back in November of 2007, a particularly disturbing post was made on 4chan. The anonymous user uploaded a picture of a young woman and claimed that whoever guessed their own post number would be given a set of coordinates. These coordinates would allegedly lead to the body of the girl in the photo. As uncomfortable as it is, this sort of content is a regular occurrence on 4chan, so people played along. But the coordinates did in fact lead to a body, and this was later identified as Emily Sander, the young woman seen in the photograph. Some believe this was a hoax perpetrated by a 4chan troll, but others are convinced that the poster killed Sander and gave the coordinates to her body. Number 17. Hashtag MyNYPD. Issues of police brutality are a hot topic in the news, and it's represented best through the misaimed hashtag MyNYPD campaign. In 2014, the New York Police Department looked to bolster their image on social media and created the hashtag. The idea was to have everyday people post pictures of themselves interacting with friendly police officers. But this simple post ignited a firestorm. The hashtag was quickly hijacked and people uploaded many instances of police brutality and abuses of power.
Despite the unexpected response, the commissioner defended the social media push.
What we are trying to do is be more open, more transparent.
Swinging batons, people getting thrown onto the ground and choked, it was all there. The protest movement was incredibly popular and it thoroughly dismantled the NYPD's benign intentions with an upsetting reality.
In a social media conversation, though, the end users are as loud as the organization that starts the conversation.
Number 16. Claire Miller. You never know about the people on TikTok. Some may look ordinary, but are actually harboring dark secrets or malicious inner demons just waiting to emerge. This is eerily exemplified through the account at Spirits and Such Consulting, which had about 20,000 followers. The girl who ran this account seemed like your typical teenager, posting about anime, dancing, and making jokes about her dad. However, internet sleuths later linked this account to a convicted murderer named Claire Miller, who stabbed and killed her disabled sister in 2021.
Prosecution argued that Miller was obsessed with homicide and that she was afraid of harming herself or others. The Miller family has asked for mercy from the courts and hoped that their daughter would be able to get treatment for her mental health in a clinical setting.
The videos were made prior to her arrest, with the most recent being uploaded just one day before the killing occurred. Miller is now in prison, having been convicted of third-degree murder. Number 15, nightclub fire.
You can also see here where Good Samaritans and firefighters used sledgehammers to break through into the bathroom and try to drag people out here to safety. The pain here is still very raw tonight.
Those who follow DJ Bolinia on Facebook would have seen a pretty common picture on the morning of January 27th, 2013. His Facebook photo is a regular nightclub scene, complete with purple lights, a band playing on stage, and a packed room with people standing shoulder to shoulder. But it was shortly after this photo was uploaded that tragedy struck. The picture was taken at the Kiss nightclub in Brazil, which suffered a devastating fire when stage pyrotechnics ignited the soundproofing foam in the ceiling. The building did not have adequate fire escapes and was over capacity, resulting in hundreds of injuries and 242 deaths. This makes it the second deadliest fire in Brazil's history. Number 14, McD Stories. It's evident that many people love a good hashtag takeover. The New York Police Department learned this the hard way, and so did McDonald's. Back in 2012, the famous chain launched the hashtag McDStories, hoping to inspire positive tales about their delicious food and unbeatable hospitality. Naturally, customers quickly hijacked the hashtag and shared some less than fortunate incidents. Tales ranged from the comedic and goofy to the disgusting, disturbing, and even tragic. Horrific injuries, unfortunate farming practices, and even fatal heart attacks. You name it. The campaign was such a disaster that McDonald's pulled the plug after just 2 hours. But the damage had long been done. Number 13, an unfortunate Photoshop. Kim Zolciak is a regular cast member on The Real Housewives of Atlanta, and she has repeatedly been accused of photoshopping pictures of her children. Perhaps the most infamous case occurred in 2018 when Zolciak posted what looked like a harmless picture of her daughter Kaya with her son Kane. However, her older daughter Brielle posted the same photo to Instagram, and people immediately noticed some key differences. In Zolciak's photo, young Kaya's nose looks slightly smaller and her bottom slightly bigger. The latter is especially evident in the way the baseboard warps in Zolciak's photo, but looks normal in Brielle's. The revelation quickly gained traction on social media, with many condemning Zolciak for making the alterations.
Why do that to a baby? What is the matter with you?
Number 12, staying for pizza. It was September 8th, 2014, and DiGiorno saw that the hashtag #WhyIStayed was trending. Deciding to hop on the wagon and not doing a single second of research, they added their contribution. Hashtag #WhyIStayed, you had pizza. Simple enough. Except this hashtag was being used for a much more nefarious and uncomfortable purpose. It was actually being used to facilitate discussion about domestic abuse and why people stay with their aggressive partners. Put in that context, the DiGiorno post takes on a whole new and far less wholesome meaning. The company quickly deleted the post, admitting that they did not read what the hashtag was about before posting. They then spent the next day writing personal apologies to offended users. Number 11, taking a bite. In June 2014, Puma posted a photo on X, formerly Twitter, depicting a muscular man wearing the blue jersey of the Italian soccer team. Accompanying the picture was the caption, "Players look damn good in those Puma shirts. Hard to resist taking a bite." Odd phrasing. What's that about? Well, this was actually part of a wider meme in which companies and corporations were making bite-themed puns about soccer player Luis Suarez. During the 2014 World Cup, Italy was playing Uruguay when Uruguay's Suarez bit Italy's Giorgio Chiellini on the shoulder.
It looks to me, dare I say it, that he's had a little bite at Chiellini. Surely not again.
It was not a serious injury, but it was enough to get Suarez banned from football for 4 months.
The player Luis Suarez is banned from taking part in any kind of football-related activity, administrative, sport, or any other, for a period of 4 months in accordance with Article 22 of the FIFA Disciplinary Code.
Number 10,
Walrus attack. Jia Lijun believed he'd made an unusual friend, a walrus at the Shishako Wildlife Park in China. He documented his trip to the park on WeChat, where he referred to the walrus as so strong, so big. Unfortunately, he made a terrible mistake when he entered the walrus's enclosure, turned his back on the huge animal, and attempted to take a selfie. The walrus grabbed him and pulled him into the water. According to staff at the zoo, it may have been acting playfully rather than aggressively. But after a struggle, Jia and a zookeeper who tried to help him were both drowned. Number 9. Hitting the hay. Back in 2013, the supermarket company Tesco sent a tweet to its followers that read, "It's sleepy time, so we're off to hit the hay." This seemingly innocuous statement became unexpectedly popular, receiving hundreds of comments and over 2,000 retweets. But not for a positive reason. Only a few days earlier, Tesco had been accused of selling burgers with horse meat in them, an accusation which, unfortunately, turned out to be true.
That's horrible. Like, as a student, so I'm buying the cheaper stuff. So, I don't like to have to buy, I know it's not made very nicely. The fact it's got horse in it, I was like...
Tesco's ill-timed reference to hitting the hay caused an uproar on Twitter and prompted an apology by the company spokesperson.
Don't Twitter. For the love of Jesus, just stop.
Number 8. Be careful what you repost.
In 2014, one Philip Bradbury made a request to U.S. President Donald Trump on Twitter. He wrote, "My parents who passed away always said you were a big inspiration. Can you please retweet for their memory?" He included a picture of a middle-aged couple. Not one to refuse a fan, Trump obligingly retweeted and became the butt of jokes throughout the UK. It turned out that the parents in the photograph were none other than Fred and Rose West, notorious English serial killers who murdered at least 12 people before they were caught in the 1980s. Everyone should be cautious about retweeting posts from unknown sources, but especially presidents.
It's like, retweet, fave, everything.
Number 7. A sinister marriage announcement. When Charlie Carver's Facebook page announced his marriage to Kayla Brown, his girlfriend, family and friends were more worried than excited. The day before, both Carver and Brown had mysteriously disappeared, and the fact that Brown had left her dog alone and unattended was suspicious. As days passed, several more Facebook posts appeared, some disturbing, such as news stories about the missing couple and violent messages. Police were able to track the location of Carver's and Brown's cell phones, which had ended up near the property of real estate broker Todd Kohlhepp. There they found Brown tied up in a crate and Carver's body.
I think he knew immediately that he messed up.
Kohlhepp had abducted them both, murdered Carver, and posted the Facebook messages in Carver's name.
This is horrible. I mean, this was a son, a brother, a friend.
Number 6. Appearing innocent isn't enough. When Alan Ruby posted a picture of himself relaxing in a hotel with college roommates, probably no one who saw it guessed that his parents and sister were dead at home. The housekeeper found them the next morning. They had all been shot.
That I was with him, just alone in his room, less than 24 hours after he shot his family. And that I could tell nothing was wrong, that he was completely normal.
In spite of the post on social media, which might have been an attempt to create an alibi, suspicion fell on Ruby pretty quickly. The young college student was a compulsive and extravagant spender, so desperate for money that he had previously stolen his grandmother's credit card. As it turned out, Ruby had murdered his 3 family members in cold blood, believing he would then inherit their money. Number 5. Posting while flying. Amritpal Singh was an amateur pilot who liked to post pictures from the air to social media. While admiring his lovely photos, friends and family members probably never stopped to think about the possible danger to Singh himself. But sadly, it eventually caught up with him.
Units be advised that parties at Front Range Airport are on their way over to the plane now. They can see it. It is down in a field at this time.
In May of 2014, Singh's plane crashed not far from the Front Range Airport in Colorado. He and his passenger, a friend, were killed in the crash.
The NTSB report stated those in the plane were also using the camera's flash function in the night.
Evidence showed that both of them had been taking pictures and selfies with their phones. Authorities believe that the flashes temporarily blinded Singh, making him lose control of the plane.
All we know is they were flying around just in the area, and deputies report that there was heavy fog in this area this morning.
Those old selfies feel different in retrospect. Number 4. At the Red Lake. In 2017, when travel vlogger Sarah Funk visited the Mitsero Red Lake in Cyprus, she and her partner probably thought the place was creepy enough. A mining company excavated there long ago, then abandoned the site, leaving an acidic crater that fills with red water every winter. Funk posted a video on YouTube of herself at the lake with what appeared to be an old suitcase floating in the water nearby. 2 years later, a Cypriot army captain confessed to murdering several people, putting their bodies in suitcases and throwing them into the Red Lake.
A travel case was pulled from the lake, containing the body of a woman and a block of cement.
So chances are, without realizing it, Funk was near one that day in 2017. Number 3. Off the road. Based on her social media posts, Gabby Petito's travels across the United States with her boyfriend Brian Laundrie seemed idyllic. An aspiring influencer, she documented them hiking, camping, and having fun on the beach. However, all was not as it seemed. Witnesses told police that they saw an altercation between the couple. Police found Petito distraught. About a month later, Laundrie returned to Florida in their van, alone.
The Laundrie family acted with indecency. They acted not as humans. This girl was part of their family.
Not long after, Petito's body was discovered in a national park in Wyoming. Laundrie, the prime suspect, was found dead in a swamp sometime later. He had taken his own life, and in his notebook, he had admitted to killing Petito. Number 2. Dating turned deadly. When Sydney Loof didn't come to work one day in November of 2017, concerned friends and family contacted the police. Investigators saw that her last post to social media had been a selfie with the caption, "Ready for my date." She had been in contact with a woman on Tinder named Audrey. They also found that her phone had pinged at an apartment near Lincoln, Nebraska. However, the apartment's residents, Bailey Boswell and Aubrey Trail, had disappeared. The couple posted videos on social media claiming they didn't know what happened to Loof, but had fled because the police were after them. After Loof's remains were discovered not long afterward, both were convicted of first-degree murder.
Trail said he panicked and they disposed of Loof's body in the rural
Number
Clay
1,
County field when it was
scam,
light out.
An escape, and a murder. Our top pick is one of the most disturbing stories in social media history.
So did you kill your mom?
No, sir.
Did you help?
No, sir.
Dee Dee Blanchard had a joint Facebook account with her daughter, Gypsy Rose, where she would post asking for donations. Rose was apparently suffering from leukemia, muscular dystrophy, and other ailments.
I'm going to Children's Mercy Hospital to see my dentist.
As it turned out, however, Dee Dee had been lying to doctors and friends for years. Rose had no serious medical conditions and had been confined to the house and forbidden to speak to anyone. When Rose was 20, she met a sympathetic young man online, and they hatched a plan to murder her mother. Once it was done, Rose announced the fact on their Facebook page. Although Rose is now in prison, she says she feels freer than before.
Our next eye-opening list is all about kids' TV shows, and it's a reminder that sometimes the most disturbing stories are hiding in plain sight.
Why us?
Well, 'cause it's bad news, and in class today, you guys made bad news sound not so bad.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 normal-looking kid shows with disturbing backstories.
I knew in that instant I was going to lose my job on Blue Peter.
For this list, we'll be looking at children's television programs that were plagued by dark or shocking occurrences behind the scenes. What do you think of these stories? Did any of your favorite shows turn out to have some dark secrets? Number 10. Jamie Lynn Spears faces criticism for her pregnancy. Zoe 101.
Hey, Zoe. Shh. Don't worry, she sleeps like she's dead. Yeah, I'm gonna go brush my teeth. Don't forget to floss. Yeah, right.
Jamie Lynn Spears got her big break after she signed onto the classic Nickelodeon comedy drama Zoe 101. The series was going 4 seasons strong when news spread that it was canceled. The reason? Many pointed towards her pregnancy. In 2007, a young Jamie Lynn Spears announced she was expecting a child.
I was pregnant and I was going to
become a mother.
Since she had an innocent reputation from her Zoe role, this news shocked many and created a media frenzy. Spears was harshly criticized by reporters and parents. Fans assumed that her pregnancy caused Nickelodeon to pull the plug on the show. However, the network decided to end Zoe 101 before Lynn announced anything. In the end, the dark aspects of Jamie Lynn's story is the judgment she received from the media and viewers.
I mean, a lot of horrible, nasty things were said.
A 16-year-old girl got pregnant and her life is over.
Talk to me in 6 months and see if she has a career.
Number 9. Angelique Bates is mistreated by her parents on set. All that. Although comedic actors always look like they're having fun on camera, there's no telling what harsh events might be happening when the film isn't rolling.
I'm Randy.
And I'm Mandy. And this is Cooking with Randy and Mandy. Hi, Randy.
Hi, Mandy.
Unfortunately, first-hand accounts prove Angelique Bates had to deal with heavy issues on the set of All That. She was part of a strong cast that entertained and enjoyed a great reception. However, Bates left after the second season of the show.
Nothing was done to help me until approximately 1996 when CPS was called.
She later stated in interviews that she was mistreated by her parents on set while other cast members were in earshot. Although someone did call the proper authorities, multiple people encouraged her to keep the truth hidden. Years later, she openly shares her story to promote awareness for issues children face in the entertainment industry.
The industry is very judgmental, so I went through phases where I was told I wasn't light enough or I wasn't skinny enough.
Number 8. A Kermit the Frog actor is fired. The Muppet Show. You'd think an actor who consistently provides the voice for the iconic Kermit the Frog might be set for life.
Are you Kermit the Frog?
Of course I am.
Wire for you.
Cute bit.
But that wasn't the case for one performer. After original actor Jim Henson passed away in 1990, Steve Whitmire took over the role of Kermit, but he was fired in 2016. Whitmire claimed that his firing was sudden and he didn't have a chance to address the company's issues.
I had no advance warning on that. You know, nothing had ever been framed to me as a career-breaking problem. You know.
But Disney representatives alleged that it had been hard to work with him for a while. They claimed that he had years to change his unprofessional and egotistical conduct and chose not to.
Kermit's longtime puppeteer, Steve Whitmire, fired for what the Muppet Studio calls repeated unacceptable business conduct over a period of many years.
No matter whose side of the story is correct, it's clear that it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes of the Muppets. Number 7. Presenters have their questionable pasts revealed. Blue Peter. Blue Peter is likely the longest-running children's TV show globally because it's a brilliant piece of edutainment that many can enjoy. Since it's such a strong staple, the actors involved are probably under more scrutiny than normal. In the 1980s, presenter Peter Duncan came under fire after stories surfaced that he acted in a very risque scene before appearing on Blue Peter.
11, 12, 8, 13.
But the series has seen even worse hiccups. In the lead up to the 40th anniversary of the show, tabloids revealed presenter Richard Bacon took an illegal substance prior to his employment.
So I got fired for taking drugs.
I'm so sorry.
But he shouldn't have done it live on the show.
No. They would shout, "That's a rap," and I'd shout, "Where?"
Although he was quickly let go from the show in the wake of the backlash, he and Blue Peter both went on to have more success. Number 6. David Yost faces harassment and a bad work environment. Power Rangers franchise. While Mighty Morphin Power Rangers graced many childhoods with over-the-top action and adventure, things weren't always more phenomenal behind the scenes.
Park's not big enough for the both of us. That's right.
Which one's Billy?
I'm Billy. Can't you tell? No, he's the fake. I'm the real one. Don't listen to him. He'll try anything to trick you.
Since the first cast was non-union, they received abysmally low paychecks and had to do a few dangerous stunts. One of the last original Rangers to go was David Yost.
You know, you shouldn't have to go to work. Nobody should have to go to work and have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Although he stayed on for multiple seasons, crew members reportedly mistreated him and threw slurs at him because he was gay. Yost even attempted to try changing his sexuality during the run of the show.
Basically, I just felt like I was continually being told I'm not worthy of where I am because I'm quote-unquote a gay person and I'm not supposed to be an actor and you can't be a superhero. That's sort of the vibe that I was getting.
A producer insisted that the actor's issues came down to salary. Any way you slice it, it's clear that it didn't always pay to be a Power Ranger. Number 5, exploiting young people. Kid Nation. While this wasn't necessarily a show aimed at kids, the reality show's premise needed young participants.
It won't be easy. Pioneer living is tough. And the amazing part is, these pioneers are children.
On Kid Nation, 40 children between the ages of 8 to 15 were sent to a remote location to try and build a working town and win cash prizes. There were claims that children were overworked and had health scares on set.
What happened, man? What happened? What happened? Is it a sudden pain or a...
Yes.
Right here? Right here?
Yes.
Keep your foot down. It's just a muscle cramp.
Although there were medics, there were reports that the adults helped stir up conflict to make the episodes more dramatic. And it didn't help that parents of the participants reportedly didn't know how much their kids would be put through.
To what degree was that really like just you versus the elements? How much intervention was there?
There was enough just to get us by, but other than that, I didn't think there was a whole lot.
It's a shame that some young people had to go through hell just for a reality show that lasted 1 season. Number 4, a very inappropriate creator, The Ren and Stimpy Show. While some animated shows occasionally push the envelope, Nickelodeon's The Ren and Stimpy Show tore the envelope to shreds.
I'm gonna hit you, and you're gonna fall. And I'm gonna look down, and I'm gonna laugh.
Its unhinged nature unfortunately echoed some of what was going on behind the scenes. Show creator, John Kricfalusi, was a controversial figure who maintained a toxic work environment where he treated his staff like garbage.
He lost a lot of the people that gave those characters heart and feeling and appeal.
In the documentary, Happy Happy Joy Joy, The Ren and Stimpy Show, specific and horrifying details came to light. Not only was Kricfalusi horrible to certain staff members, but he also had incredibly disturbing and allegedly criminal interactions with certain fans.
I was falling in love with her letters, and I knew that probably is not right, but I was just so smitten by her personality in her letters.
Watching a few minutes of these interviews alone might be enough to completely ruin any positive perception you have of the cartoon. Number 3, creators harass actors and staff, several Nickelodeon shows. Unfortunately, Nickelodeon has more than one problematic story about showrunners on the network. Loud House creator Chris Savino was let go in 2017 after over 10 women complained about his inappropriate behavior. But the most infamous incident involved Dan Schneider. This producer was known for his work on iconic shows like All That, iCarly, Victorious, and several others.
Hi, what would you like on your hat dip? It's not as fun as it seems.
But Nickelodeon dismissed Schneider in 2018. Stories about him going on angry tirades and his questionable behavior towards young performers also came to light. Behind-the-scenes footage also hints at how uncomfortable he could be on set.
This is Dan Schneider reporting from the iCarly studio. It's late at night, nearly midnight, and we're filming the last scene of the day.
It's safe to say neither Schneider nor Savino will return to Nick anytime soon. Number 2, allegations against an Elmo actor, Sesame Street. Even Sesame Street was not immune to its own share of problems beyond the veil of happiness. While Northern James Calloway was playing David on the show, he grappled with mental health issues and erratic off-screen behavior.
Listen, not everybody is like craving adventure like you do.
Yeah, I guess so. Oh, I don't know, David. I can't help you. I'm sorry. Okay. It's just not exciting enough around here for me.
There were even more notorious behind-the-scenes allegations surrounding Elmo voice actor Kevin Clash. In 2012, there were reports that Clash had been involved in inappropriate and illegal relationships.
The Sesame Workshop stated, "The controversy surrounding Kevin's personal life has become a distraction that none of us wants. This is a sad day for Sesame Street.
Shortly after the allegations were made public, he decided to leave the show. Clash ultimately never faced jail time, and even went on to work on series like The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. But the disturbing allegations mean that his career as Elmo is definitely done. Number 1. Heavy drinking and raunchy rehearsals. Rainbow. Rainbow was conceived as the British equivalent of Sesame Street.
Well, what sort of fair was it then?
Well, Zippy, see, it's a craft fair. People take along lots of things that they've made, then they sell them on the stall.
But while it may have maintained an on-screen innocence, things were more mature off-camera. In Zippy puppeteer Ronnie LaDrew's memoir, he mentioned that there were heavy drinkers on set. Cast members reportedly also used sexist language towards coworkers and put puppets in adult positions.
Oh, I wish I could have seen all those things and maybe bought something.
Oh, that reminds me, Jen, I bought something for you at the craft fair.
Perhaps the most notorious incidents involved the unaired studio Christmas tape, which became known as the Twangers episode. It involved cast members making deliberate innuendos in character.
Let's get back to Bungle's Twanger. Oh, Jeffrey! We could all paint our twangers, couldn't we?
While this piece never actually aired, it was a little peek at how inappropriate everyone could get when audiences weren't watching.
It's time now to uncover some shockingly eerie backstories behind seemingly ordinary pictures, where sometimes a smile can conceal a tragedy.
It is a picture his best friend says Hadley claimed would be his last.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most unassuming snapshots with the darkest backstories and explanations.
When the police found that camera and they said, oh, the camera's destroyed, it's been through the washing machine, but they take that little memory card and they find these photos?
Number 30, John Edward Robinson's family portrait. At first glance, this seems like a normal family photo, depicting the classic nuclear setup, complete with a baby sitting on her father's lap. However, the reality is much darker. The man in the picture is John Edward Robinson, later exposed as a con man and a serial killer who operated in Kansas City. In 1985, Robinson cunningly befriended the infant's struggling mom under the guise of providing them with a better life. Soon afterwards, he killed the mother and gave her baby to his brother to raise.
They thought everything was on the up and up. They had the papers, they had the adoption forms that looked like been signed by judges and attorneys. They had no clue.
To make things worse, Robinson remained in the girl's life, posing as her uncle until he was finally arrested over a decade later. This portrait captured a final moment of peace before the lives of several people were irreparably changed forever.
John Robinson's got that baby and posing for pictures in his house with that baby, bouncing on his knee with his brother and sister-in-law there who have come down to Chicago to get their new adopted baby.
Number 29, his master's voice. Who knew a logo could be so devastating? While the sight of a cute dog listening to a phonograph seems adorable upon first glance, the story behind it is much sadder. According to the original artist, his inspiration came from watching the pooch listening to his late owner's voice and seemingly trying to figure out where it was coming from. That explanation immediately takes the painting from cute to tragic. The thought of a pet still being able to recognize the people who raised them even long after their deaths is bittersweet at best. There's no doubt at all just how good of a boy he truly was, and his unwavering loyalty to his late master has been immortalized forever. Number 28, hiking tragedy. Do you notice anything unusual in this photo of someone climbing a waterfall? While it looks like a regular landscape, there's one thing that sticks out: a sudden shock of red hair. That color saved a young woman who had fallen off the same cliff in Santa Barbara County in 2014 and been badly hurt. She blended in with the scenery, so much so that the photographer had captured their friend's climb without realizing she was in the background. Although they eventually noticed her and assisted in her rescue, it was an extremely close call. We can only imagine the horror the photographer would have felt had they not noticed her in time, and instead found her in the shots when it was too late. Number 27, last photo of Abigail Williams. In 2017, teenager Liberty German innocently posted an image of her friend Abigail Williams crossing a bridge in Delphi, Indiana. Looking at it, you wouldn't think anything was amiss. just a couple of pals having fun. Later that same day, they were both captured and subsequently killed by an unknown assailant.
This is the bridge that we've all seen in the images released to the media. You can see now some flowers left behind in memory of the girls.
A video on German's phone showed an unknown man ordering them down a hill. This provided police with a lead, and on October 31st, 2022, they charged a suspect with the murders, who has since confessed to his wife while in prison, according to court documents.
It was Libby who managed to take a cell phone picture of a strange man on the bridge. He's the prime suspect.
While the case is still unsolved, the pictures have been vital to the investigation and will hopefully be enough to help put the murderer behind bars for good. Number 26, James Bulger and his abductors. Some images highlight just how cruel the world can be. Upon first glance, seeing a couple of young kids walking hand in hand wouldn't trigger any suspicion. To many, it would just look like an older and younger sibling. However, that idea was turned on its head after one horrifying instance. On February 12, 1993 in Merseyside, England, security footage captured two children walking together, an older boy and a toddler.
James was being led away by two young boys. Immediately then, it confirmed the witness that had stated earlier that there were two boys on the canal bank. It then became very worrying.
Unbeknownst to adults nearby, the toddler, James Bulger, was being kidnapped. He lost his life later that day at the hands of the older child and his friend. Looking at the original footage, no one would have guessed his true intentions. Justice was swiftly served, but the incident shook the nation and started a larger discourse about punishing minors. Number 25, scuba diving death. What was supposed to be a fun, peaceful activity suddenly became a crime scene. While going scuba diving, a man took a photo of his wife underwater. This could have been a cool shot, but their attention swiftly shifted to a shocking discovery in the background. Behind his partner was the body of another diver lying on the floor of the reef. This belonged to Tina Watson, who had been on her honeymoon in Australia before her untimely death on October 22, 2003. The news caused immediate speculation that culminated in her husband being convicted of manslaughter.
They argue he planned to kill his new wife, also he could collect on her life insurance policy.
The fact that this was all caused by one seemingly innocent picture is harrowing. Had it not been taken, her body may not have been discovered until much later. Number 24, Haiku Stairs. Hawaii boasts a plethora of gorgeous scenery, both natural and human-made. This includes the captivating Haiku Stairs, which unfortunately have been closed off to hikers for decades due to their dangerous state. Despite this, many adventurers still brave the trek. In early 2015, teenage hiker Dalen Pua walked the trail and posted photos of the view. After he went missing, those posts became the only clues. His parents soon made a chilling discovery: a hidden figure camouflaged within the greenery, seemingly stalking their son. This revelation transformed the case from a simple disappearance to something more sinister. While the trail has gone cold, the family is still determined to identify the man pictured and get closure on what happened to their son. Number 23, Franklin Delano Floyd and Suzanne Marie Savakis. What seems like a wholesome portrait of a father and daughter is actually much more twisted and horrific. The man in the photo, Franklin Delano Floyd, abducted Suzanne Savakis as a young girl and raised her. As if that wasn't twisted enough, he ended up marrying her when she grew up, even forcing her to take on a series of aliases to keep the police at bay.
Floyd knew the law enforcement would be looking for a man, his daughter, and her child. They would not be looking for a man and his wife and their child. And that's why they stopped and got married.
He ended up taking her life when she tried escaping as an adult. When looking at an image of them, many wouldn't even fathom that so much evil could be brewing just beneath the surface. Although he was eventually imprisoned for his crimes, the chilling snapshot shows how long he had gotten away with his twisted deeds. Number 22, Class of 1999. Class photos are not a new concept. They've been around for decades and show a glimpse of the graduating cohorts. This one looks to be completely normal until you look at the top left corner. There, it's easier to notice a few kids pretending to point guns at the camera. Those students, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, the perpetrators of the horrific Columbine massacre.
Kids, grab your friends, hold them tight, and never be mad at people because it could happen in a second that they'll be gone.
Their pose served as an early red flag prior to their act, but the group was so large that they completely slipped into the background. Once the shooting had occurred, the picture was seen in a new light. Now, it serves as a reminder that monsters can be anywhere, even hiding in plain sight in the high school gymnasium. Number 21. Harold Agnew holding Fat Man H-bomb. It's interesting how even culturally significant and controversial moments can have the most banal beginnings. Before the nuclear bombs were dropped in World War II, they'd been worked on by top scientists. During this developmental phase, they looked nothing like the weapons of mass destruction they're known to be today.
Actually, we did not witness Hiroshima. We were busy with our instruments.
In fact, they appeared so innocuous that when physicist Harold Agnew was photographed holding one of their cores, people didn't even realize what it was. His smile and the seemingly ordinary object in his hand masked the project's true intentions. This picture of Agnew holding the plutonium is a stark reminder of the people behind some of the most devastatingly powerful objects in human history. Number 20. Tragedy by the Sea. At first glance, this photo might appear romantic. After all, it shows a couple on a windswept beach. But look closer, and the woman's distraught expression says it all. Right before photographer John L. Gaunt took the shot, the couple's 19-month-old son had been happily playing in their yard. But he wandered off and disappeared into the waves. The couple is standing on the shore, realizing their son is gone. This photo actually won the 1955 Pulitzer Prize, and given the backstory, it's a haunting shot of sudden and unexpected tragedy. Number 19. The Space Shuttle Challenger crew. It's unclear where the astronauts in this photo are going, but they appear excited and optimistic about whatever's on the horizon. Doing some digging, you'll find that the crew was walking out of the operations and checkout building. They were headed for Pad 39B, where the Space Shuttle Challenger was about to take off. The STS-51L mission was notable for its diverse crew, although that's sadly not what it's best remembered for.
Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Only a minute after launching, the space shuttle exploded.
73.5 seconds. Challenger's engine shut down. The last data from Challenger is radioed to Earth.
While nobody knows precisely when each crew member died, nobody survived after the spacecraft hit the ocean. This photo was taken on January 28, 1986, mere hours before the crew unknowingly embarked on what would be their final mission. Number 18. Christopher McCandless. With a grin across his face, the man in this picture appears to be content and healthy. This bearded explorer is Christopher McCandless, the subject of the 2007 biopic Into the Wild.
Is there anybody here?
Leaving his old life behind, McCandless decided to fend for himself in Mother Nature's backyard, eventually seeking refuge in an abandoned Fairbanks Bus 142. In August 1992, the 24-year-old McCandless died at Stampede Trail, Alaska, most likely due to starvation. Based on the last self-photo he took, it's evident McCandless knew his days were numbered. While it's hard to make out, the paper McCandless is holding is his farewell message, reading, quote, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye, and may God bless all." Number 17. Lightning strike. While the numbers vary, the odds of getting struck by lightning are relatively slim. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take lightning safety seriously, though. This photo of 18-year-old Michael McQuilkin and his 12-year-old brother Sean has served as a cautionary tale ever since it was taken in 1975. Posing together at Morro Rock, the brothers were goofing around with their hair standing on end. Their static hair and those storm clouds in the background were more foreboding than either realized, as lightning struck them shortly after their sister took the picture. Another hiker died, and while the brothers survived, Sean was left with third-degree burns and took his own life in 1989. Michael continues to spread awareness about the dangers and warning signs of lightning. Number 16. Another day in Oma. Looking at this photo, the first thing you're inclined to notice is the man standing in the street and the child on his shoulders. Meanwhile, the red car parked on the side of the road appears inconsequential. What you might not realize is that the photo was taken in Oma, a Northern Ireland town, on August 15, 1998, not long before this car blew up. The Real Irish Republican Army, a splinter group, executed this car bombing 5 days after the Good Friday Agreement was signed. Although the Real IRA claimed that innocent civilians were not their target, 29 lives were lost in the bombing, and roughly 220 were injured.
It was the biggest loss of life in a single attack in Northern Ireland.
While the man and child thankfully survived the bombing, the person behind the camera did not. Number 15, David A. Johnston. While not a household name, David A. Johnston was a revered volcanologist who, along with the United States Geological Survey, helped save thousands of people through his on-site work. Tragically, Johnston lost his own life in the process. All seems well in this photo, as Johnston sits in a chair outside looking into the camera. Little did anyone know that within the next 13 hours, Johnston would perish in the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. The eruption, preceded by seismic activity, was first reported by Johnston, who radioed the message, quote, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." Within the next seconds, the signal went out and Johnston was never heard from again.
So I guess I had the realization right away that this was some kind of a tragedy. And on the one hand, it was this huge, exciting, and interesting magmatic eruption, and on the other hand, I was pretty certain that something terrible had happened to Dave.
While his remains were never found, it's believed that Johnston died at Coldwater 2, a post that wasn't as safe as anticipated.
I think one of the things to put in perspective is that 234 square miles of that area of Washington were devastated by that blast. So 5.7 miles, that was within that devastation zone, the blast zone.
Number 14, Mark Jackson's basketball card. For die-hard sports fans, you'll recognize the player on this basketball card as Mark Jackson, who started his NBA career with the New York Knicks and later coached the Golden State Warriors. At first glance, this card would likely blend in with the rest of your collection. Take a closer look at the lower left-hand corner, though. You see those two young fans sitting in the front row? They are Lyle and Eric Menendez, two wealthy brothers who took the lives of their allegedly abusive parents on August 20th, 1989.
The brothers who were thought to have it all, at times acting out, even going as far as robbing houses until they were caught.
The brothers weren't arrested for these crimes until March 8th, 1990, and in between that time, they spent an extravagant amount of money.
So at the time, nothing seemed suspicious to you about them?
No. But soon detectives shifted their focus.
The brothers were out there spending money like it was water.
It appears that some of that fortune went towards Knicks tickets before their apprehension. Number 13, Rodney Alcala. If we asked you to name the man in this photo, you might take a wild guess and say Christoph Waltz if he had Weird Al's hairdresser. In reality, he's Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. How did he get such an outlandish nickname? Because Alcala appeared on the dating game prior to his 1979 arrest.
The woman who won a date with him ended up backing out, saying she found him creepy.
Come on, over here.
Her intuition probably saved her life. Others would not be so fortunate.
While his total victim count could be as high as 130, Alcala was trialed for 5 murders in 2010, almost 31 years after his apprehension. Alcala represented himself in court, as seen in this picture. Even more bizarre, Alcala was his own defense witness, asking himself, quote, "Rodney, would you please tell us about your hair?" Alcala ultimately received the death sentence, but died of natural causes while awaiting execution. Number 12, Ayano Tokumasu. Remember that scene in Superman 2 where a little boy falls over the rail at Niagara Falls?
Oh my God!
Well, that sort of thing happens more often than you think, but Superman sadly isn't around to save the day. On the surface, there doesn't seem to be anything particularly special about this photo, which sees several people gathering at Niagara River. The woman in the red sweater is Ayano Tokumasu, an exchange student from Japan. If you think standing on that pillar seems kind of dangerous, you'd be right. Not long after the photo was taken, she lost her balance and fell over the edge, ultimately going down Horseshoe Falls. Tokumasu was swept from the river's Canadian side to its American side, where her lifeless body was discovered.
People just go too far. You know, I don't blame anything on the park. I just think people wanted to get that extra edge, get closer, and unfortunately, things happen.
Number 11, the SS Grand Caen. The SS Grand Caen may not be a household name like the Titanic, but it's forever linked to the Texas City disaster, and this photo captured the vessel just before tragedy spiraled out of control. On April 16, 1947, smoke was seen emitting from the docked ship in Texas City. A fire had broken out with about 2,200 tons of ammonium nitrate aboard. This naturally amounted to an explosion, but that was only the beginning.
Texas City, Texas was jarred by a tremendous blast.
The blast ignited a subsequent explosion on the High Flyer. another ship carrying ammonium nitrate.
And about 8:15, they housed me to come aboard the ship, that they had a fire down in the hold. Went aboard the ship, and we seen smoke coming up from between the cargo and the side of the ship.
The ensuing chain reaction resulted in a loss of 581 lives, with only one survivor from the local fire department. Number 10. Apollo 1 pool party. The space pod in the swimming pool is only the second weirdest thing about this photo. Like, how often do you see astronauts lounging on water floats while wearing their spacesuits? Surely there must be a humorous story behind such a surreal image. Unfortunately, it's quite the opposite. The suited-up astronauts in this photo were Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee. They were training for the Apollo 1 mission, which was planned to commence in February of 1967. On January 27th of that year, a fire broke out in the cabin during a pre-launch test. Unable to open the hatch door, the 3 men perished in the fire, which was caused by electrical problems. Thus, the mission ended before it even started.
The pad where Grissom, Chaffee, and White died is now a memorial. Lieutenant Colonel Virgil Grissom, U.S. Air Force, and Lieutenant Commander Roger Chaffee are buried at the Arlington National Cemetery. Lieutenant Colonel Edward White is interred at West Point Military Academy.
Number 9. Bear photographer. There are countless photos of bears out there, and this one doesn't look much different from all the rest. Since the picture was taken from a distance and the bear isn't charging, the photographer seemingly isn't in any immediate danger. After Darsh Patel snapped this pic using his phone, however, the bear started to follow him and his friends. The group split up as the bear began to close in on them, ultimately pursuing Patel. His phone was eventually found with animal teeth marks, while Patel's body was discovered at a nearby ravine.
A scenic Sunday afternoon ended in horror when 5 hikers crossed paths with a 300-pound black bear that looked similar to this one.
The bear was still hanging around the 22-year-old's fatally mauled remains, and the authorities took the wild animal out.
We believe this bear was about 4 years old. It was not a tagged bear, meaning it had no history with the DEP. There was no research done on this bear that we know of. It had no previous incidents of aggression that would have called it to our attention.
This photo op came at a steep price for Patel and the bear. Number 8. What are you smiling at? The 2 men being escorted in this photo are Richard Hickok and Perry Edward Smith. Although handcuffs are visible, the jolly smile on Smith's face suggests they're only in for a mild offense. This couldn't be further from the truth. Ever hear of a book called In Cold Blood? Well, Hickok and Smith provided the basis for this best-selling true crime novel. The 2 criminals were convicted for the Clutter family murders and sentenced to death.
Richard Hickok, the first to be executed, decided by a coin toss. Perry Smith's was second.
In this chilling photo, Hickok and Smith can be seen leaving the courtroom right after receiving the guilty verdict. Much can be said about Smith's haunting grin. If there's one takeaway from the image, though, it's that this crime was indeed cold-blooded. Number 7. BTK at graduation. Dennis Rader was his church's president, a Cub Scout leader, and an all-around pillar of the community. As you can tell from this photo, Rader was also a family man who seemed quite proud of his daughter Carrie at her college graduation. This would all be overshadowed, though, when Rader was exposed as the BTK Strangler, the letter standing for Bind, Torture, Kill, his preferred MO.
When BTK came forward, everybody's life changed. He would see a woman walking and he would say, "She's next."
Over the course of multiple decades, this seemingly ordinary guy took 10 lives. In 2005, the authorities used Carrie Rader's DNA to link her father to a crime scene, culminating in his arrest.
Carrie had graduated from K-State, and while there, had tests at health services, both a pap smear and a biopsy. Investigators traveled to Manhattan with a subpoena in hand for those smears. Her DNA, a direct match to DNA left at BTK crime scenes.
Rader pled guilty and was subsequently sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. About 14 years after her father was captured, Carrie released a book entitled A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story of Faith, Love, and Overcoming.
It's been like a cathartic process of having to go do really hard work and find those memories again of my father that I had lost and try to separate my dad back out as my dad and remove the BTK from it.
Number 6. Dutch Girls of Panama. Scrolling through Instagram, chances are you'll stumble across a number of pleasant photos like these. Standing against a colorful backdrop with green hills and blue skies, 22-year-old Lisana Froon appears to have a lovely day ahead of her. Froon was on vacation with 21-year-old Chris Kramers, a fellow Dutch student seen in another photo at the same spot. The two set out for a hike in Panama on April 1, 2014 when these pics were taken. This was also the day that Froon and Kramers disappeared, resulting in a grueling search. 10 weeks down the line, Froon's backpack was uncovered with her camera inside. Froon and Kramers' remains were eventually found scattered across the jungle, with the cause of death still up for debate. Number 5. Travis Alexander. Travis Alexander was 30 when this photo was taken of him in the shower. The person behind the camera was Jodi Arias, with whom Alexander had a shaky romantic relationship. This was the last photo ever taken of Alexander alive, as his friends found his body in the shower a few days later. It was only a matter of time until the authorities connected the dots and arrested his ex-girlfriend. Arias constantly changed her story, originally pleading innocence, later claiming that 2 intruders broke in, and ultimately testifying that she killed Alexander in self-defense.
Why? The simple answer is that he attacked me, and I defended myself.
In the end, Arias was deemed guilty of first-degree murder, receiving a life sentence.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn, in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, do find the defendant as to count 1, first-degree murder, guilty.
Alexander appears off guard in this photo. He clearly had no idea what was coming. Number 4. The Eternal Shadow. At face value, this dark outline of a person could be chalked up to some harmless graffiti. While we wish that were the case, this shadowy figure resulted from the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In August of 1945, the U.S. dropped 2 nuclear weapons, Little Boy and Fat Man, that resulted in anywhere between 129 and 226,000 deaths.
At 8:14, it was a sunny day. At 8:15, it was a hellscape.
Whoever this person was, it appears they were using a walking stick during their final moments when the blast hit. As a result of the bombing, an imprint of this unknown soul was left on the steps. This wasn't an isolated incident, as numerous shadows can still be found around the bombing sites, forever immortalizing those horrifying days. Number 3. The Happy, Creepy Killer. Without any background information, the wide-eyed kid in this picture probably wouldn't strike you as very threatening. When you know the whole story, however, that innocent smile of his will quickly turn into a ghastly grin. This curly-haired 17-year-old is Jeffrey Franklin, who killed his parents and attacked his 3 siblings. Following a car chase, the authorities cornered Franklin at a dead end. The photo shows Franklin in the back of a police vehicle, not appearing especially distraught over the atrocities he's committed or his impending future behind bars. Claiming he felt like a, quote, evil being had taken over him, Franklin pled guilty and received 3 consecutive life sentences.
I don't blame anybody for the reactions to me because I feel that I justified most of them.
Number 2. Goodbye, John Lennon. We're all familiar with the music of John Lennon as well as his tragic fate. Photographer Paul Gorish couldn't have predicted it at the time, but this would reportedly be the last picture anyone took of Lennon. The image seems innocent enough as the former Beatle signs his autograph for an apparent admirer. Lennon's impending demise was creeping up in the photo's corner, however. The man standing next to him is none other than Mark David Chapman, the one responsible for Lennon's untimely demise.
Hard to get to write at first. Then he wrote his name, John Lennon, and then underneath that, 1980. And he looked at me, as I mentioned earlier, he said, "Is that all? Do you want anything else?"
6 hours or so after this photo was taken, Lennon and Yoko Ono encountered Chapman again outside of their apartment building, the Dakota. With Lennon's back turned, Chapman drew his firearm, and the music world would never be the same again.
So I called the Daily News. He said to me, you think you have what? And he said, "Paul, are you sure that this is the man that you believe killed him?" And I said, "Well, that's the man named Mark from Hawaii who was waiting out there all day with the album, who got the autograph."
Number 1. Tyler Hadley and the Red Solo Cup. Mere hours before raising his red Solo Cup in this pic, 17-year-old Tyler Hadley hid his parents' cell phones and shut their dog in a closet. Hadley proceeded to end his mother's life and then did the same to his father. After cleaning up the mess, Hadley shared on Facebook he was throwing a party that very night. At said party, Hadley told his best friend Michael Mandel all about his heinous actions.
After he told me, I didn't believe him because he's been my best friend forever. I would never suspect anything like this. And I was looking around. He told me if I look at enough, I can see signs. I looked on the floor, I could see signs of blood. And that's when I went around back and looked in his parents' bedroom.
Using his phone, Mandel subsequently took this picture with Hadley, knowing it would be the last time they ever saw each other. Leaving the party, Mandel called Crime Stoppers. This led to Hadley's arrest and life sentence without parole.
Nearly 3 years of pain and worry now starting to slowly subside with the stroke of a gavel.
Have you ever been shocked by a supposedly inconspicuous picture?
You could see the horror in his face.
Up next, we're going to be exploring performances that once enchanted audiences, although they were likely unaware of the darkness that fueled them.
Thank you for being here tonight to honor my husband. He wrote a song for me.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're looking at musical performances that might not immediately strike you as unsettling until you learn the whole story. Jesus Loves Me, Whitney Houston and Kelly Price. 3 days before the 2012 Grammys, Whitney Houston attended an event at a nightclub where she performed an unplanned duet with fellow R&B artist Kelly Price.
No one knew it then, but Whitney Houston's final performance was Thursday night.
The two sang Jesus Loves Me, which seemed appropriate given their gospel roots. This song choice soon took on a haunting sentiment, being the last public performance Houston gave. On February 11th, the same day that Houston was to appear at another pre-Grammy party hosted by mentor Clive Davis, she was discovered dead in her Beverly Hilton hotel.
She didn't look like she was under the influence of anything. She drank champagne and toasted Kelly Price's 3 Grammy nominations.
The Grammys had multiple touching tributes to Houston the following day. In retrospect, though, it doesn't get more chilling than Houston and Price's duet. As casual as it was spontaneous, nobody could have predicted this would be Houston's swan song. Smile Jamaica concert, Bob Marley. Bob Marley gave the performance of a lifetime on December 5th, 1976, solidifying Smile Jamaica as one of his crowning achievements. Had it not been for a moment when Marley pulled up his sleeves, you'd never guess that this reggae legend was shot multiple times only 2 days earlier. The Intruders also hit band assistant Lewis Griffiths, manager Don Taylor, and Marley's wife Rita, the latter of whom survived a near-fatal blow to the head thanks to her dreadlocks.
I felt the warmness, the blood running down. Then I realized I was shot.
Astonishingly, nobody died in the assassination attempt, with Bob and Rita performing on stage as planned. While the shooting overshadowed the concert, it didn't define it. Lasting over an hour, it's easy to get lost in Marley's music, forgetting how this performance almost didn't happen. What a Wonderful World, Ava Cassidy. Coming from humble roots in Washington, D.C., this artist was just starting to gain recognition in the 90s.
I see trees that are green.
On September 17th, 1996, Ava Cassidy found herself surrounded by loved ones at the Georgetown music venue, The Bayou. Participating in a benefit concert, Cassidy concluded her set with one of her favorite songs, What a Wonderful World.
I see friends shaking hands.
The song itself has always been bittersweet, but it's devastating to learn that this was Cassidy's final public performance. The previous July, doctors found that cancer had spread throughout Cassidy's body, suspecting she had less than a year to live.
I see trees that are green.
Despite seeking treatment, the melanoma took its toll that November. Cassidy continued to grow a following over the years, but she tragically didn't live to see this success.
What a wonderful world.
Paris performance, The Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones tour of Europe 76 was winding down when the band played at the Pavilion de Paris. Their performance on June 6th seemed like any other. What the cheering crowd didn't realize was that guitarist Keith Richards was enduring every parent's worst nightmare. 10 weeks earlier, Richards and his partner Anita Pallenberg welcomed their third child into the world. On the day of this Paris performance, Richards received word that his son was gone. Richards initially kept the loss private, going on with the show. Although many questioned his decision, Richards didn't know how else to deal with the grief, believing he would have shot himself had he not performed. Not being there when his son passed would remain one of Richards' deepest regrets. There are worse things I could do. Vanessa Hudgens. Many considered Vanessa Hudgens the MVP of Grease Live, her rendition of There Are Worse Things I Could Do being a highlight.
There are worse things I could do.
Betty Rizzo put up a tough front, but behind her brave face is a well of sorrow. To an extent, Hudgens could relate during this vulnerable moment. A night before the live special, Hudgens lost her father to cancer. Like Rizzo, Hudgens showed great resilience during this difficult time, saying that her sadness and desire to honor her father would fuel her performance.
I could stay home every night.
Nowhere was this more apparent than during this emotional song. While it works beautifully within the context of Rizzo's character act, the audience is moved to tears knowing that Hudgens is doing everything in her power to keep it together.
That's the worst thing I could do.
Munich, Germany concert. Nirvana. For grunge fans, seeing Nirvana live was a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. March 1st, 1994 would be the last opportunity, although nobody realized this at the time. Playing at Terminal 1 of Munich Riem Airport, Nirvana had several more gigs lined up on their In Utero European tour. Shortly after the performance, frontman Kurt Cobain came down with a serious case of bronchitis and laryngitis. Cobain's history of substance use, coupled with severe depression, went into overdrive during this time. As performances were canceled and rescheduled, the future of the band was called into question. With the discovery of Cobain's body on April 8th, 3 days after enduring a self-inflicted gunshot wound, it became clear that the Munich performance would go down in history and notoriety. Rule the world. Take that. No matter who wins the gold, the closing ceremony is always a triumphant Olympic moment. For Take That member Gary Barlow, it was one of tragedy and recovery in 2012.
You light the skies up above me.
As the flame was extinguished at the London Summer Olympics, the English pop group performed Rule the World. The lively tune makes the audience feel like they can illuminate the sky. But this particular performance serves as a reminder of how suddenly a star can fade away. A week before the ceremony, Barlow and his wife, Dawn Andrews, lost their stillborn daughter. As devastated as they were, Barlow found the strength to perform alongside his bandmates, dressed in black with a phoenix in the backdrop. Equally inspirational and heartbreaking, the stars came out that night. The last concert, Selena. On February 26, 1995, the Queen of Tejano music performed before a sold-out crowd of more than 66,000 at the Houston Astrodome, setting a new attendance record. It was not only a historic night for music, but also fashion, with Selena sporting a now iconic purple jumpsuit. Even if the concert wasn't marked by tragedy, this would have been a performance to remember. That said, this concert is remembered as Selena's final bow.
No me queda más si tu regreso sería.
The following month, she was murdered by the president of her fan club, Yolanda Saldivar. Several years later, Selena's last concert would be immortalized through a live album and DVD release. As grateful as we are for these recordings, Selena's fiery performance reminds us how much more she had to offer. I'll Never Love Again, Lady Gaga. 2018's A Star Is Born delivers an emotional wallop as Lady Gaga's Ally pays tribute to her late love Jackson through the finale, I'll Never Love Again.
Wish I could have said goodbye.
As tear-jerking as the song is, it's even more powerful knowing what drove Gaga's genuine performance. Before shooting, Gaga received word that Sonia Durham, a friend since childhood, was about to succumb to cancer.
Don't wanna give my heart away.
Gaga immediately left to be by Durham's side, but arrived 10 minutes too late. Director co-star Bradley Cooper was more than willing to postpone, but after talking with Durham's husband,
I'll never love again.
Gaga decided that returning to the set would be the best way to honor her friend. Ally might be singing for Jackson, but Gaga sang for Durham, saying she gave her a tragic gift. West of the Rockies tour, Elton John. Thanksgiving 1974 saw two superstars collide as John Lennon joined Elton John at Madison Square Garden for a surprise performance.
Trust me, darling, come on, listen to me, come on, listen to me, come on, listen.
Little did anyone realize this would be among Lennon's last public appearances before his 1980 murder. Elton John also came close to death in 1975, announcing that he had taken 85 Valiums before jumping into his pool. John's premature death was thankfully averted with an emergency team showing up to pump his stomach. Despite feeling overworked to the point of nearly taking his life, John performed at Dodger Stadium 2 days later, saying, "I have a very strong constitution, and the show must go on." Fans were elated to see John, although few knew how fortunate the world was that he was still standing. Which music performances do you look at differently, knowing their backstory?
Art can be beautiful, but it could also be disturbing. If you know the stories behind them, that is. Why, just take a look.
He would also suffer a cataclysmic breakdown, culminating in an act of bloody self-mutilation.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 normal-looking paintings with disturbing backstories.
Carlo's life was marked by significant physical suffering.
For this list, we'll be looking at paintings you may or may not be familiar with that have darker origins and meanings than you might think. What is your favorite painting? Does it have an interesting backstory? Number 10. The Fairy Feller's Masterstroke, Richard Dadd. Artists and mental health issues seem to go hand in hand quite often. Richard Dadd was known for his meticulously detailed, fantastical style. However, his personal life was wrought with psychological woes. In 1843, upon returning from a trip on which he had had a mental breakdown, Dadd slowly became convinced that his father was the devil and ended up murdering him. He was then caught and institutionalized.
He was placed in the Royal Bethlehem Hospital, better known as Bethlehem Hospital, and colloquially known as Bedlam.
He continued to paint despite this, and was in the process of painting the Fairy Feller's Masterstroke for a hospital official when he was transferred.
He felt motivated to make these extraordinary works into which, one can't help feeling, he imaginatively displaced himself as a kind of escape from the conditions in which he was held.
It is thus unfinished. Upon closer inspection, the inner turmoils of Dadd can perhaps be detected in some of the finer details.
The main figure is the Feller himself, who looks a little bit perhaps like Richard Dadd. raising an axe.
Number 9. The Ambassadors, Hans Holbein the Younger. The Ambassadors is an interesting piece and has been subject to much speculation throughout the centuries since it was painted.
This is one of the most popular paintings in the National Gallery. So it's extraordinary to think that when it first came here in 1890, people understood so little about it.
It depicts two friends, Jean de Danteville and Georges de Salve, both French diplomats. The two were on an assignment to reconcile Henry VIII with the church when the portrait was commissioned. Though the image initially appears to simply show two friends, the symbols within tell a different story. The instruments and items behind the pair represent both sides of the reconciliatory argument, where the lute with a broken string represents a rift or discord between them. The lower-centered distorted image, or anamorphosis, viewed from the correct angle, shows a human skull, perhaps a reminder that mortality conquers all in the end.
One of the ways that the skull would come back into the correct perspective is by using a small cylindrical piece of glass. If you hold that in front of the picture, then the image of the skull appears correctly in it.
Number 8. Self-Portrait with Monkey, Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo's works appear as bright, vivid self-portraits heavily influenced by the Mexicanidad movement, a Mexican cultural revival following the revolution. There is, however, a deeper symbolism to Kahlo's works.
A self-taught artist, Kahlo created imagery that primarily focused on personal stories, on love, and its connection to pain in her life.
Though we could look at any number of her pieces, let's focus on her self-portraits with monkeys, of which she painted 8. Kahlo had a number of pet monkeys at her home in Coyoacan. She herself admitted that the monkeys replaced the children she could not have.
Kahlo was drawn to monkeys for their symbolism and their playful, childlike nature.
Kahlo's serious injuries following a bus accident in 1925 had rendered her infertile.
As a result of the accident, Kahlo was in and out of hospitals throughout her life and subjected to numerous painful surgeries.
Kahlo was also interested in Aztec history, and monkeys were recognized in Aztec beliefs as fertility symbols. All this makes us look a little differently at these portraits, really bringing a certain sadness to them. Number 7. The Lovers 2, René Magritte. Though Magritte himself denied any correlation between his use of shrouded faces and a traumatic childhood experience, we can't deny the probable influence. When Magritte was 14, his mother took her own life by drowning.
This was not the first time she had tried to end her own life. She had attempted it many times, often resulting in her husband Leopold locking her in a bedroom for long periods. It is rumoured that Magritte was present when her body, with her face covered completely by a white dress, was recovered from the river. While this is probably a myth propagated by his governess, the image of the head covered in cloth often occurs in his paintings.
Young Magritte witnessed her body being taken out of the water with her nightgown shrouding her face. The artist produced a number of paintings featuring shrouded or obscured faces, leading us to believe the image was firmly planted in his mind. In this example, The Lovers, a couple is depicted sharing a kiss while their faces are obscured behind white sheets. The symbolism is open to interpretation, as Magritte did not reveal the motivations behind his works, wanting to leave them subjective.
René Magritte described his paintings as visual images which conceal nothing. They evoke mystery, and indeed, when one sees one of my pictures, one asks oneself this simple question: what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything, because mystery means nothing.
The Love is Blind theme is frequently recognized here. Number 6. Portrait with Bandaged Ear, Vincent van Gogh. Van Gogh was plagued with mental health issues throughout his life, and this self-portrait represents one of his most infamous fits.
A cataclysmic breakdown, culminating in an act of bloody self-mutilation. What led to the tragic downfall of this tortured genius? Did he cut off his whole ear? Or, as some believe, just a small piece of it?
When he was roommates with fellow painter Paul Gauguin, the two got into an argument, and Van Gogh had a mental seizure and threatened his fellow artist with a razor. Unfortunately, he only injured himself with said razor, slicing off a piece of his own left ear, which he then presented as a gift to a local lady of the night.
She fainted at the sight of it. While Vincent disappeared into the night, and then returned home.
He claimed to have no recollection of the episode. Van Gogh painted many self-portraits, but the couple featuring the bandaged ear on the right side in paintings due to using a mirror while painting symbolizes the darker psychological side of a troubled man, whether intentional or not. Number 5. Black Triptychs, Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was, like some aforementioned artists, careful not to adhere meaning or stories to any of his works.
With the record of the image comes the mood, because you can't make an image without it creating a mood. A person or a thing, either a portrait or a figure. I think there's a whole world there to be opened up.
He did, however, admit to narrative in his Black Triptychs, particularly Triptych August 1972 and Triptych May to June 1973. Bacon had a romantic relationship with George Dyer, a man of unfortunate upbringing.
They became inseparable. Dyer was not sophisticated, but went to every single exhibition that Bacon had, would travel regularly to Paris. Bacon famously never worked from live models. He would either recall their image from memory, or critically would start adopting John Deacon's photographs of people like George Dyer.
Dyer became his artistic model and lover in the 1960s, though the relationship was ill-fated, mostly due to Dyer's alcoholism. Dyer took his own life in an adjacent connected hotel room in 1971, while Bacon was at the opening of his art retrospective. The Black Triptychs depict the way in which Dyer was found, one from the perspective of Dyer's room, one from Bacon's side. The paintings are admittedly a catharsis for Bacon's emotional grief. Number 4. Two Tahitian Women, Paul Gauguin.
Paul Gauguin's life was the stuff of romantic fiction.
Sometimes the darker parts of artist biographies are glossed over in favor of artistic praise. Paul Gauguin produced a large number of paintings during his time in Tahiti that featured bright colors, stunning vivid landscapes, alluring locals, and what the artist called a primitive paradise.
Tahiti had long taken root as an earthly paradise in the European imagination.
However, the women depicted in the paintings were not always simply Gauguin's muses, they were also his mistresses. In his time in Tahiti, Gauguin infected a large female population with syphilis. He named his home the House of Pleasure, took strolls with an erect penis-handled walking stick, had a second-floor room plastered with lewd photographs, and so on. This makes us look at the women in paintings such as Two Tahitian Women a little differently. Number 3. Judith slaying Holofernes, Artemisia Gentileschi. Artemisia Gentileschi was an Italian Baroque painter and a highly talented artist influenced primarily by Caravaggio.
The 17th century art world simply wasn't ready for her. Not only was she a woman, but she was one who favored gory biblical scenes over demure portraits and still lives. But through talent and determination, she forged a 40-year career. She was feted across Italy and beyond, and her work was collected by the likes of Charles I and Queen Henrietta Maria.
The majority of her works feature images from myth and religion. Judith slaying Holofernes depicts the biblical story of Judith, who infiltrated the Assyrian army during the war with Palestine in order to take the life of General Holofernes.
The story is usually interpreted that she seduces the general, but he gets drunk and falls asleep, and then she takes his sword and beheads him. And that's the moment that we're seeing here.
And she's accompanied by her maidservant.
The painting is often seen as a sort of self-portrait, as Artemisia was sexually assaulted by family friend and painter Agostino Tassi, after which she threatened him with a knife for taking her honor. A closer look at the painting reveals that Judith wears a bracelet featuring the goddess Artemis, who guarded her virginity vigilantly and violently retaliated against anyone who threatened it.
And it looks to me like she's rolled up her sleeves in order to do this. The naturalism is so palpable here. And of course, that is the heart of Baroque art.
Number 2. The Ghent Altarpiece, Hubert and Jan van Eyck.
Throughout 6 centuries, the Ghent altarpiece has been burned, forged, and raided in 3 different wars. It is, in fact, the world's most stolen artwork. And while it's told some of its secrets, it's kept others hidden.
The Ghent altarpiece was commissioned by Ghent, Belgium's Mayor Jodocus Veit and his wife Lisbeth in the 1420s, and completed by 1432. It is a 12-piece installment depicting religious figures, scenes, and symbols.
It's one of the most influential artworks ever made. When Jan van Eyck completed it in Ghent in 1432, it was immediately deemed the best painting in Europe. For millennia, artists used tempera paint consisting of ground pigment in egg yolk, which created vivid but opaque colors. The altarpiece was the first to showcase the unique abilities of...
The piece has a volatile history. In the 16th century, the Great Iconoclasm, or Bildungssturm, a movement to destroy religious iconography, would have seen the destruction of the altarpiece had it not been for rabid clergymen hiding it. In 1781, Roman Emperor Joseph II viewed the piece and declared the nudity of Adam and Eve to be offensive, causing those panels to be removed. It was also historically dismantled and separated, cut in half, narrowly survived a fire, was bricked into a wall, stolen, nearly blown up. It is currently in restoration.
It's a miracle that it still exists, but otherwise you only see texts on what has happened with it. With this augmented reality, we can really bring visitors to this past so they can experience themselves with their eyes what has happened.
Number 1, the Charnel House, Pablo Picasso. In 1937, Picasso painted Guernica, a depiction of the bombing aftermath of a small village during the Spanish Civil War. It's an aggressive vision of chaos and a poignant anti-war statement.
The style offers a profoundly overwhelming view of violence, destruction, and casualties. Multiple perspectives only compound the horror on display, sending the eyes hurtling around the frame in a futile hunt for peace. On the far left, a woman holding her dead child releases a scream. Her eyes sliding down her face in the shape of tears, and her head bending back unnaturally to echo her baby's.
Around 1944, the artist painted something of a sequel to Guernica in Charnel House. Picasso was said to be apolitical and that he did not concern himself with political affairs. However, the Civil War changed that, and his reaction is clear in the two pieces. Charnel House depicts a Republican family who was murdered in their house during World War II, turning, according to Picasso, their family home into a charnel house, meaning a storage vault for bodies. Though the piece may initially not look striking, proper observation reveals the grotesque nature of the subject matter within.
Picasso's work remains a searing reminder of the true casualties of violence.
For our last video, we're going to be investigating inventions that may have changed our lives, but are tainted with disturbing secrets.
It's considered completely modern scientific Victorian medicine in the treatment of hysteria.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 inventions with disturbing backstories.
Thanks in large part to Haber's invention, Germany was able to continue manufacturing ammunition from synthetic nitrate and fight on.
For this list, we'll be going into the surprisingly dark or upsetting origins of many common inventions and everyday items. If there's a shocking origin of an invention that you're shocked wasn't originally on our list. Number 10, Kleenex. The name brand in facial tissues, to the point where they're practically a synonym for them, Kleenex got their start during the First World War.
Kleenex Ultra Soft Tissues. 3 layers strong for sneezes, smudges, and everything in between.
While their signature product would have certainly been useful for people with the Spanish flu in 1918, it wasn't actually introduced as a facial tissue at the time. In fact, it was for another, even deadlier danger that they were developed.
Something happened in trench warfare that changed the course of the war and changed the way we understand warfare today, and that is chemical warfare.
During the war, cotton proved to be in short supply. What later became known as Kleenex in 1924 was first created as a type of crepe paper that was used in filters in gas masks. A Kleenex might seem like poor protection between your lungs and a deadly gas, but it was better than having no filter at all.
After the war ended, the Kimberly-Clark Corporation still had the recipe for the lightweight cotton alternative and was looking for a way to market it to the masses under the slogan, "Don't carry a cold in your pocket."
Number 9, telegraph. Samuel Morse was not the first person to think of a telegraph, but his world-famous Morse code and development of a single-wire telegraph allowed communications over long distances to really take off.
Oddly enough, it's likely that this is an iconic sound you're familiar with, but it's equally likely that you never really encounter it in your daily modern life anymore. This sound is Morse code.
It's unfortunate that his interest in telegraphy was likely the result of a personal tragedy. Morse was also an artist and would frequently go on trips away from home for commissions from his clients.
He was commissioned by the city of New York to paint Marquis de Lafayette. While he was traveling, his wife Lucretia wrote to him from their home back in New Haven, Connecticut.
During one of these trips, Morse received word that his wife was sick and he hurried home directly. Tragically, she was already dead and interred when he arrived. Had Morse been able to use his later invention, he likely would have been able to see her during her final days.
Morse's idea is simple. By turning a switch on and off, you can send a series of electrical impulses across a wire to a distant receiver. If you create a pattern or code, you can send a message.
Number 8. Magnetic tape. While it may be outdated now, magnetic tape was revolutionary for storing audio and later video recordings in the 20th century, for everything from radio to TV.
Tape. Basically the same tape that filled our homes in the 80s and 90s in the form of cassettes and VHS.
However, this innovation was first perfected in Nazi Germany. German electronics companies developed the improved recording technologies during the 30s, and by the advent of World War II, the Nazis had improved audio recordings compared to their Allied foes.
A US-American scavenger operating in Germany, Jack T. Mullen, found some amazing magnetic tapes in the field, and he was absolutely amazed.
It wasn't until the Allies' victory that magnetic tape was discovered by other countries and proliferated throughout the rest of the world.
After World War II, magnetic tape recorder technology obtained from Germany began to take hold as a recording medium in the States.
Plenty of innovations came out of Nazi Germany, but this is one of the more surprising. Number 7. Baby monitors. Baby monitors are one of new parents' best tools.
Say hello to a new class in monitoring. Miku Pro.
Keeping one in your child's room lets you hear their discomfort and cries from anywhere in the house. But the necessity for these devices was hammered home by one of the United States' most infamous kidnapping cases. Famous aviator Charles Lindbergh and his wife went through every parent's nightmare in 1932 when they awoke to discover their son missing and a ransom note in his bedroom.
The Lindberghs would experience one of the most severe media frenzies in history.
The kidnapping was called the crime of the century, and Charles Jr.'s heartbreaking death left an impact on parents all over the country.
The nation is transfixed as the manhunt for the Lindbergh kidnapper begins. An egregious act immediately dubbed the crime of the century.
Eugene MacDonald was one such, and he created the radio nurse in 1937, the world's first baby monitor to listen in on his infant daughter's room. Number 6. Radar. The world wars in the early 20th century were also an arms race to see who could create the next deadly weapon. One idea that fascinated scientists and military leaders alike was the concept of a death ray.
The British government feared an aerial invasion and wanted a death ray that could knock German planes out of the sky.
British scientists hoped to discover a way to use radio waves to kill foes at a distance. However, the power requirements were enormous. Ultimately, they hit on the idea of using the echoes of radio waves to detect incoming airplanes in the sky, which was arguably even better, tactically speaking.
During the Battle of Britain, towers like Stenigott sent radio pulses out into the sky and measured the echoes back to work out the direction that German raids were approaching from.
While many nations came up with the idea independently, Britain, with the help from American factories, figured it out first.
Teams from Germany, Japan and the US were all working on their own radar systems, but the UK's was the most advanced.
Thus, radar was born. Number 5. Vibrators. Let's all try to be mature about this, okay?
One of the first 5 electric gadgets, besides the sewing machine, fan, toaster, and tea kettle, was a plug-in sexual stimulator.
Vibrators are sex toys, yes, but they weren't originally used with sex in mind, explicitly anyway. The electric vibrator was invented in the 19th century and used to relieve various maladies, including pain relief, tumors, and hysteria.
The medical establishment has offered hysterical women a veritable smorgasbord of treatments. Warm baths, ice baths, water jets, mesmerization, horseback riding even. But I favor a more direct approach.
The last of these was most pertinent to vibrators' eventual purpose, as it was essentially medical professionals misunderstanding women experiencing frustration.
Like a lot of manual tasks that are difficult and possibly onerous, it was mechanized.
And so was born the vibrator.
And the fact that the relief of said frustration was considered a medical procedure at the time is just all kinds of disturbing. Number 4. Ammonia fertilizer. Fertilizer is essential in crop growing, and natural sources can often lack the nitrogen that leads to efficient crop yields. Enter Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch. These two German scientists created the Haber-Bosch method, which creates ammonia from nitrogen in the atmosphere.
Without this reaction, farmers would be capable of producing enough food for only 4 billion people. Our current population is just over 7 billion people. So without the Haber process, over 3 billion people would be without food.
Most of the world's annual food production comes as a result of fertilizer created with this process, and it's likely that the world couldn't support as many people as it does today without it. However, the two of them also worked on weapons development during the First World War.
Most believe he was far more interested in helping Germany make more explosives. Because while ammonia can be made to produce fertilizer, it can also be easily converted into nitric acid, a very important ingredient for explosives. And as World War I got underway in 1914, the Allies blockaded German ports, cutting off Germany's supply to all of those nitrates coming from South America. Thanks in large part to Haber's invention, Germany was able to continue manufacturing ammunition from synthetic nitrate and fight on.
With Haber being considered the father of chemical warfare due to his work on chlorine gas. Something to think about the next time you're doing yard work.
Haber would create even deadlier gases, combining chlorine with phosgene, which blocks metabolic processes and leads to pulmonary edema, death by fluid accumulation in the lungs. Dozens of gas attacks would take place over the next few years, and 90,000 soldiers are estimated to have died by gas poisoning in the war, with 1 million suffering adverse effects. You know, you have to wonder what motivated Haber after a time. I mean, the gas was obviously not putting a quick end to the war, so why would he continue, fully aware of the effects?
Number 3, GPS. Global Positioning System, or GPS, is a satellite system that can track signals all over the globe.
These satellites are continuously beaming data down to us on Earth, which is in turn received by devices such as your phone or navigational units in your cars, allowing you to see where you are on the planet. There are a lot of misconceptions about how GPSs actually work, an example being that your phone and the GPS satellites are both talking to each other. So let's get down to it. How do GPSs work?
It's also owned and operated by the United States military. While some may find this disturbing, what's arguably more upsetting is why the US military began allowing the use of it by almost anyone. In 1983, Korean Airlines Flight 007 was flying from New York to Seoul via Alaska. A navigation error led to the plane flying into Soviet airspace, and the civilian craft was shot down.
The United States reacts with revulsion to this attack. Loss of life appears to be heavy. We can see no excuse whatsoever for this appalling act.
While the tragic loss of life was awful and led to a rise in tensions between the two superpowers, President Ronald Reagan decided to make GPS available on a global scale to prevent similar avoidable losses of private aircraft.
Among the rest of us, there is one protective measure, an international radio wavelength on which pilots can communicate with planes of other nations if they are in trouble or lost. Soviet military planes are not so equipped because that would make it easier for pilots who might want to defect.
Number 2, bicycles. What do climate change, a volcano, and dead horses have to do with the creation of the bicycle? Everything. 1816 was the year without a summer. It was so called because a massive volcanic eruption in Indonesia the previous year coated the world in ash and clouds for nearly a year.
In Europe, China, India, and North America, 1816 was a year of endless winter. Snow fell in July, rivers froze in August, and crops failed on a gigantic scale. Maybe up to 1 million people died of famine or disease. Yet the awful year also laid the seeds of the century to come. Migration patterns, literature, art, politics, all were affected in ways so profound we're still living with the results today.
This led people to slaughtering their horses for food when crops could not grow. And with horses being the primary mode of transport, the inventor Baron von Drais was inspired the following year to invent the first hobby horse, or velocipede, known today as a bicycle.
The machine produced by Baron von Drais had 2 wheels of the same size, handlebars and a brake, so much of what we know from a modern bike.
It was an ingenious idea, but sales didn't immediately go through the roof. The price tag of 40 guilders was more than many people earned in a year. It was to be another 50 years before a pedal-powered velocipede came to the scene, with 2 pedals driving the front wheel.
While cycling didn't catch on immediately, his invention proved that a dark year for the world could lead to good things.
By around 1900, the bicycle was a mode of transport for all. What started out as a plaything for the nobility was now mobilizing the masses, and even women were getting in on the act.
Number 1. Treadmills. Treadmills have been around for thousands of years in some form or another. However, while their use as a man or animal power source for mills is well documented, fewer people know about their connection to prisons.
In the 1800s, treadmills were created to punish English prisoners.
Like the treadmills connected to farms or actual mills, penal treadmills did power devices, but they were also a form of punishment for prisoners sentenced to hard labor. Most often seen in England, these torturous machines tormented prisoners in 6-hour shifts.
Well, it turns out prison treadmills had a problem. They were deadly. Prisoners were expected to treadmill for at least 6 hours a day. That meant prisoners logged over 10,000 feet, the equivalent of climbing the CN Tower over 5 times every day. This caused prisoners' bodies to break down. It's been estimated that complications from the treadmill killed about 1 person per week. And so, the Prison Act of 1898 put an end to treadmills as punishment.
Naturally, they were eventually abolished, but they were still used for most of the 19th century. Really puts your workout into perspective, doesn't it?
When the jogging craze hit the US in the 1970s, the treadmill was thrust back into the limelight as an easy and convenient way to improve aerobic fitness and lose unwanted pounds, which, to be fair, it's pretty good at doing. And the machine has maintained its popularity since.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this deep dive into all the seemingly ordinary things that became unsettling thanks to their disturbing backstories. I've been Matt from WatchMojo, and I'll see you next time.